Hello, my name's Tom Brown, and I'm going to show you how to make a bicycle for the upcoming Bicycles on Main event. So step number one is to really just have a vision for the bike. So just like the Scarecrows. So you're taking the whole sensibility of the Scarecrows and applying it to the spring with a bicycle. So you could go with a flower motif. You could go with flowers and baskets. That's very Dutch. You could go with chef, and you could just decorate it with food and cooking utensils. You could go with a sports team or a sports activity. You can go with a dragon, a unicorn. As wild and diverse as the Scarecrows are, you just apply the same thing to the shape of a bicycle instead of the shape of a scarecrow. And don't be scared of, being creative with the bike. It does not need to be perfect if you're not planning on riding it. You could have a rideable one. Just make sure it's safe before you go ahead and paint it and decorate it. But if you want to have one that's just for looks, you can have one like this, and it's better than being used in the scrap heap. And we'll probably be able to use them year after year too. So if you have something like this, what you want to do is you want to give it a good clean, and then you want to come up with a color. And just by pumping up the tires and using some type of good color, it's going to make this whole bike transformed, as you can see with my bike that I did, the turquoise one. And then you start with the decorations. Obviously flowers is the motive of choice for springtime. It's very festive, very lovely. Color, don't use white. An all white bike is it's the only color that's kind of off limits, because that's the color that's used for bicycle memorials. So when somebody gets killed in a bike accident, a lot of their friends will put up a white bicycle, and it will have a plaque and people will write messages on it, and it might have flowers as well. So that all white color is really the only one that you don't want to do. So don't do an all white bike. But apart from that, basically anything is on the table. I've seen a cheese bike before. I've seen contact paper on a bike, yarn, taking an old riding toy, like an old hobby horse, and putting it over the bicycle. There's all kinds of things. You could a bale of hay as the bike. It really is as creative as you see people get with the Scarecrows. So have some fun with it. Okay, so first thing you got to decide about your bike is it going to be a rider or not? So with this particular one, it could be a rider, but I'm going to make it so it's not a rider. If it's not a rider, you can take off a lot of the extra equipment that you would normally need on a riding bike. So you can remove the brakes and maybe use those on a different project. You can take off the derailleur, you can take off the chain. Essentially we'll have the shape of a bike as a blank canvas to work on to start with. And that's what I'm going to do next. Hey, so take a look. It's much more cleaner lines. I'll need to reattach this fender here, but notice we've still got the shape of the bike, but now it's a blank canvas for us to do our art on. So if you're considering doing a flower or art bike this year, the rules basically are to decorate a bike. And you don't want to decorate a bike that could be rideable by somebody else somewhere, or was likely to be. So this one needed a lot of work, and the work required and the parts required, like new tires, it would have been more than the cost of the bike. So better put those resources in a bike that's a little bit better. But what we're going to do is we're going to make a beautiful art bike out of this. One quick message about department store bikes. If you talk to any bicycle mechanic, they'd rather work on a bike like this than a department store bike. The reason those bikes are really cheap is because those bikes are really cheap. Please don't consider them anything other than a disposable bike. Like the red Solo cups that you drink out of once, that's the type of bike you get when you go to a department store, unless you luck out. And that's not being elitist, it really is just a different type of bicycle. So if you have a nice bike, consider maybe asking for a different bike. A number of bikes are available that are like this, or different designs, different styles, but you can get a bike like this and we can help you to find one, so you don't have to mess up a good bike to do this. If you do want to eventually ride it around, absolutely, you can use a better quality bike and put that out as well. So now that we have our canvas bike, don't be put out by the rust. If there's a little bit of rust on the bike, it's really not that big a deal. If we're going to paint over it this year and you want to decorate on top of it, you can make it look nice and classy without having to go all out and restore all the rust to it. If it's a dry type of rust, you might consider painting right over it. If it's an oily type of rust, you definitely want to power wash the bike first before you go out there. One trick that works really well, you can see where I did it on this side. If we look here, you can see that it's kind of rusty, right? And it might put you off from using a bike like this for your decoration because you want it to look nice. Well, look at this other side. This was just 2 minutes worth of cleaning. What you do is you ball up some aluminum foil and any type of cleaning product. You could use Miss Meyer's spray, whatever. Squirt, 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 rub, 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 and the rust will come right off with a wipe. You let it dry off and then you can paint it later. So I know that everybody wants a really sharp looking bike, but you don't need to ruin good bike stuff to do that. And a bike like this is the perfect canvas. So get the idea in your mind that this is your canvas. Back in the old days, some of the masters used to use used canvases to make a new artwork. And sometimes you'll see in art shows where they look behind the top layer and there's other paintings underneath. So theoretically, we could recycle these year after year and use them as blank canvases. But to start off with, I'm going to give it a nice coat of paint and get a base color going. I've kind of got a vision for this that's going to be a basic flower bike. It's going to be celebrating the joy of spring with bright colors and flowers, much in the way of the Dutch bikes. So you can see that bike looks great now with a nice fresh coat of paint on top of it. Makes it look uniform. Now you get to the fun part. You get to decorate that bike, and decorating the bike is the funnest part. You can gather up all your materials, you can put some signage on it, nice little place in between the bars there. You can mention your organization there as well, or maybe a message, or maybe the name of your bike. Notice how I put the hat on to discourage people from trying to ride it. And then on the other side of the board, I put one of the organizations I work with. So part of the goal is to make these bikes a work of art, to inspire some joy for the springtime. So one of the things we don't want to do is to ruin a perfectly good bike, but don't shy away from an old clunker like this. So this clunker here was rescued right from the scrap heap. And we do have some of these available, so if you'd like one, you could either come to the pickup day or you could email me at tbrown@wethersfield.me. So some other things to keep in mind is you want it to be safe. You don't want your knife collection out on this so that people walk up to it and accidentally brush by and then get cut. Just be reasonably safe. You want it to be something that's going to be somewhat rugged for a month. So you can imagine that your bicycle is going to be out there in the elements, whatever they are, for about a month. You got to think of a way to secure your bike, and there are suggestions through the website and through the people who are running it. Will tell you different ways of doing that, but also, don't put out your really expensive road bike with some flowers on it, because that might be tempting for somebody to ride off on. Some of the ways to secure it very easily are to use a chain. A lot of these bikes are not really something that people are going to steal because there's no resale value in them, so you could use bolts instead of locks to secure the chain to the bicycle. You can also, if you have brakes on them, you could also lock the brakes on them so that they don't roll. What I did on mine is when I put the seat on, you could put something on the seat that discourages people from sitting on it if you don't want that. So people take pictures next to the bikes, they don't need to sit on the bikes. And then the other thing to do is to, make sure that your paint gets a full chance to dry before you start adding on the other decorations to it. But when you do, you want them to be on fairly securely. So I use zip ties. I've seen people use some strong glues that they let dry appropriately before they put them out. I've also seen people use some of that craft wire to secure things to their bike. So just think about what would make it survive for a month. One thing that I like to leave on, I'm going to show you on this other side, is the chain guard. The chain guard, this part right here, is a good place if you paint over it. You can put a message here, you can put a hashtag, you can put a little saying if you like. Same thing with the fenders. The fenders are a great place to show some type of writing. You can have writing going down the back of the fenders. I've seen that before. Writing on the sides of the fenders here, say happy spring or something like that. So there's a lot of different things you can do. And just be creative with it. It's our first year doing it. So hopefully you've got a vision in your mind, you've got some ideas. And as you play with it, as you work with it, feel free to email me if you need any tips or advice. There's other people doing this as well. So let's look at the examples out there, and let's have some fun and spread some smiles. I want to thank Peter Gillespie and the Old Wethersfield Shop Owners Association for really taking this idea that I had as I was walking around and just enjoying the scarecrows in the fall, thought about what could we do in the spring, and they really brought it to life and actually made it happen and have done all the heavy lifting with this, so I really appreciate all that. So you'll notice that a lot of the example images that I used, like this one, are from a person named Flower Bike Man, and his name is Warren Gregory. And he is essentially the Banksy of art bikes, and he's in the Netherlands now. He used to be in Florida. A couple of years ago, I interviewed him for my podcast, which is called the Bike Karma Bicycle Stories podcast. It's kind of like NPR, but for bicycle stories. And I had talked to him and asked him if I could use some of his pictures and what he thought of the idea, and he sent us this nice little message of encouragement.
Hello, Wethersfield, Connecticut. This is the Flower Bike Man, and I hear you're going to have a May Flower Bike Parade. Well, good luck to you, and spread some smiles.
Thank you, Flower Bike Man. And if you'd like to hear more of his story or more about flower bikes in general and the traditions and the new things that are happening with them, check out episode 20 of the Bike Karma Bike Stories podcast. And that's available anywhere you listen. Just type in Bike Karma. So one more event that you might want to know about in town, which we had up until the pandemic, which is the annual Bicycle Festival Show and Swap Meet, which happens the second Sunday in June annually in the morning at Hamner Elementary School. And we've had thousands of bikes there and hundreds of people. And hopefully we'll be able to do it again this year. It is the sole fundraiser for the WHS Bicycle Club, which I'm the advisor of. And since our town is such a great place for cycling and walking and running and all kinds of other activities, we have an organization in town called Bike Walk Wethersfield that I'm a part of, and it's a local advocacy group for those issues. And please consider joining or following that. And if you are involved in those issues, you can even take it a step further by joining the committee that's run through the town hall. Well, I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I hope to see your bikes out there in May. Take care.